You're watching BCTV. We're all about Brantford. You're watching BCTV, Brantford Government Television, a service of Brantford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Brantford.
Good evening. We'll call this meeting of the Brantford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is Thursday, February 6, 2020. I'll introduce members of our commission and staff. To my far right, Commission Member Joe Chadwick. Next to Joe, Commission Member Joe Viuso. Turn the corner, Commission Member Fred Russo. Next to Fred, Commission Member Paul Higgins. To my left, Commission Member Marcy Pelusi. Our staff this evening is our town planner Harry Smith, and our clerk recording secretary is Michelle Martin. I am Chuck Andrews, chair, and I will ask our secretary to read the notice of public hearing.
The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Brantford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of a public hearing to be held on Thursday, February 6, 2020 at 7 p.m. at the Brantford Fire Headquarters, 45 North Main Street, Brantford, Connecticut, to consider the following. 1. Application number 19-12.2, special exception for a new hotel, Hampton Inn, located at 470 to 478 East Main Street, Brantford Motel, etc., JK Partners, applicant and owner. Item number 2, application number 19-12.10, special exception in CAM for grading for a new septic system located at 4-3 Elms Road, David Diatri, care of Almer LLC, applicant and owner. Item number 3, application number 20-1.1, subdivision modification located at 292 through 300 Leeds Island Road, Massimo Liguri, care of Geomas LLC, applicant and owner. Item number 4, application number 20-1.2, special exception for a common driveway located at 292 through 300 Leeds Island Road, Massimo Liguri, care of Geomas LLC, applicant and owner. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard and written communications will be received. A copy of the application is on file in the Planning and Zoning Commissioner's office at the Planning and Zoning Department, 1019 Main Street.
Thank you, Marcy. We'll follow our normal format for public hearings. The applicant will go first. Come forward, grab a microphone, or you can use the podium if you like, make its presentation. After that, we turn it over to commission and staff. Staff will summarize the staff report, and we'll have questions from commission members. After that, members of the public can speak, come up. You can grab a microphone, state your name for the record, and make your comments, questions or comments. After that, the applicant will have a chance to respond to any of the public comments. And we may or may not close the public hearing depending on how it goes. With that, and we also do have copies of staff reports and agendas up front here on the table. If anyone would like to grab one, just come up and grab one. We have on our public hearing agenda, there's actually 12 items, and we've had a request from item number 9, which is JK Partners, applicant owner, 470, 478 East Main Street. That's the Brantford Motel. That's a special exception to construct the Hampton Inn. The applicant, I understand, is requesting that we open and continue the meeting, and the other items before that have consented to allow him to go first. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, James Perito, attorney for the applicant from Halloran and Sage. We received from staff the staff comments on the application just a couple days ago, and we'd like to be able to respond to them at a time when the staff could actually review them before the public hearing and the public could actually see those changes before sort of the last minute. So we had spoken to the town planner, and we felt that probably the best thing, open the public hearing, continue this to the February 20th meeting where we make our presentation, and then there could be a full review at that time if that's fine with the commission.
Thank you. That should be no problem. I will mention to the public, again, you understand this is on the Brantford Motel, the proposal to tear down the Brantford Motel and construct a new Hampton Inn and restaurant. And so we will continue that to our February 20th meeting. And so if you're here for that one this evening, I suggest you come back and you can see the presentation and comment then. However, if you can't make it and you have any comments right now, we're open to that. Seeing none, then we will just continue this to our February 20th meeting at this same location.
Thank you for taking us out of order. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Perito. That then, going back to our agenda, item number 1 is 165, 195 Main Street, Kevin Curry, applicant and owner. That's the special exception for a convenience store and is a continued public hearing. And is the applicant ready to proceed?
Yes. Larry Stout, owner of Peppy Service Station, 177 Main Street. I'm here tonight trying to find out the future of Peppy Service Station that has been an establishment in Brantford now for 80 years, which I've worked for 42. My partner, Anthony Peppy, passed away 2 years ago. Since then, the Peppy family has sold the property to Kevin Curry from Danby's Gasoline Marketeers. Mr. Curry and I came up with plans to remodel the building to accommodate my business and a convenience store with new gasoline pumps and tanks. My business would be downsized by doing this, which was okay with me because I am looking to retire within a few years. Unfortunately, we have run into some issues with parking and site design. Parking seems to be the biggest issue, with the design of the property being the second. We designed the property to what the revitalization committee wanted, giving up parking to landscaping and design to other new requirements. Now we are told that we do not have enough parking and should try and seek off-site parking for employees, etc. We have approached the owners of Richland across the street and asked the owners if we could possibly use their property for a few parking places. In return, they said we could use 5 to 6 spaces. The only problem is we would not be able to get this in writing. In the past, Richlands has always worked with the businesses in the neighborhood with parking. Shelley's Garden Center has used their property lot for years for employee parking. And many other years, the town of Brantford has used it for the old senior center on Cherry Street also. These were all by word of mouth agreements. My business is downsizing from 5 employees to 3. We only work on 5 to 6 cars per day, 3 of which are probably in the shop most of the time. The building, you're asking for 25 parking spaces on at my business alone. To me, this seems very excessive. Other issues we have had are design problems with the town. Originally, we were asked to put a loading dock and ramp up the side of the package store on the east side of the property. Since then, we've been told that the town is requesting a sidewalk and the plantings widened and raised on that side of the building at this late date. They also would want us to put sidewalks down the front of the property, which there was an exception made on the property next door, I understand, and they don't have to have any sidewalks from there to the west of our property. Other issues have been kind of like with communication between the town planners. I realize Harry is very burdened with work he has to do, but we've had a few instances trying to get meetings together, and especially with our engineer, and try to accomplish some issues there. In closing, I hope you take into consideration our issues with parking especially. We're willing to give you what you request, like we did with the revitalization committee. The last thing that I don't want to have to do is tell my employees that I am closing my business because of the lack of parking. In turn, Mr. Curry will get his needed parking and more when we are gone. Thank you.
Thank you. So I mean, at the last hearing, when we spoke, and one reason we continued is because you thought you were going to get something from Richland, but now I understand that you are not going to be able to get anything from them.
Verbal gentleman's agreement is what they called it.
Okay, so they won't even give you a letter saying you can use it, not asking for easements or anything, just nothing in
No,
writing?
they just want to offer the property like they've done with the rest of the neighborhood for forever and ever. The same thing they did with the senior center. The senior center used that parking lot for, ever since it was put into that building over there.
Okay, thanks. Harry, do you have comments?
Sure. My understanding that, is this working? Good.
Yes.
My understanding is that, and I'm just understanding now that Richlands may not give you anything in writing. So this is the first I'm hearing that's a closed, done situation. In terms of the comments, I mean, this, when it came in, was extremely incomplete application, and we've been working with the applicant, trying to get it to the point, and it's just about there in terms of all the site concerns. I just got revised lighting information yesterday. So I've been working with them, trying to get that part of it, but I think the crucial aspect of this, of course, is parking, whether you're willing to give a reduction per that section of the regulations that we've discussed the last meeting, that essentially cuts the required number of spaces about in half. So I've been trying to advise them that the greatest amount of complete information and definitive statements addressing the requirements, such as can you park off-site and where, definitively. Richlands, maybe not. If they've made an offer to pick up customer cars and drop them back off, I mean, Larry, you may be willing to do that, but the approval is for anyone operating a service station. So would the next person be willing to do that? How is that guaranteed? So I've been trying to advise them that if they can guarantee the statements they've been making, and to the degree they can do that, the better off they are, I think, in any consideration commission might make to grant the modification to the parking requirements. So at this point, we may have what we have. I don't know if that's in fact the case. If there's really no further information possibly coming, then you could close the public hearing and deliberate, and I'll write things up accordingly.
Okay, does the applicant have any other information you'd like to present to us?
I don't have any myself. Mr. Curry couldn't make it this evening. He's on a business trip out in California right now. And
So you're not aware of that he had anything he wanted to provide?
most of the issues have been issues that we've already brought up in the past. It's more or less what happens with me at this point in my business, because whatever happens, happens. If I go, he expands, tears down half of the building, and gets the parking that's needed,
Okay.
which would be over excessive by then.
The remaining site plan issues could be addressed in conditions. I don't think that's, so.
Okay. Let's, anyone on the public wish to comment?
Hi, good evening. I'm Josephine Hay. I live at number 61 Home Place. And, you know, I've listened, my husband and I have been to every meeting, and what's always discussed is this parking issue. But what I'm here to discuss again is the awful, awful problem it causes to us in Home Place. We already, and I've said this, my husband said it, we have a huge issue with Shelley's, the garden centre. Apparently, years ago, one of my elderly neighbours told me that when they got the permission to open the garden centre, and it was before we moved here 21 years ago, the parking for their business was supposed to be in the area at the front, which they now use to display their plants and stuff during 10 months of the year. But their customers park in our street, they park at the end of the street, they double park. We have a huge, huge issue. My daughter was already in an accident 2 years ago just trying to turn into our street because people just park. People come out the liquor store, package store, they just drive out onto our street. They just don't even look. We have a huge issue. We also have the added problem now with 100 yards down the street, they're going to open an Aldi store and a bank. That's going to create even more traffic. So it would appear that all that's being considered is the parking for, and I appreciate with Larry, but you know, in a few years Larry's going to be retired. He doesn't live in Home Place. We do, and we will still be living there, and we will still have to put up with these issues. And what I'm trying to say is, do the town of Brantford not take into consideration the public, the people that pay town taxes as well, and the inconvenience we have day in and day out just literally trying to get in and out of our street. Where the service station is, and they're talking about a convenience store. Why do we need a convenience store? There's one, 2 spaces down, 100 feet down the street at Getty's. It's crazy. At the moment, the service station have a full service to gasoline pumps. Now, obviously, when the new owner takes over, he's going to want to be competitive. It's going to be a self-service. He's going to want to compete with, with Getty's. At the moment, their gas is probably 10, 15 cents a gallon more. Not many people go there. But once they start to become competitive, that's going to cause even more traffic. And then you've got a convenience store. We don't need a convenience store at the end of the street. There's one 2 steps away. Mr. Curry, he doesn't live here either. He's a businessman. He's in it to make money, not to lose money. So in a few years, Larry will be gone. What's he going to do then? Is it going to be a repeat of what's happening at Shelley's? And do we have no say? Do the town not take into account the problem it is for us? This at the gas station also, at the business we're talking about, is also a pick-up and drop-off for school children. The bus stops there in the morning and at night. So what's going to happen, does anybody take that into account? You're the Planning and Zoning Commission. Do we have any say, or do we just say nothing and these things just get pushed through? Because it would appear, and this about parking it, they could be able to park on Richland Car Park. That's just, maybe whatever, and then it will never happen. So all I'm trying to say is, I just hope that Planning and Zoning take into account what we, the people that live there, have to put up with when you're making your decision, not just about a business that could be this, could be that. Larry's going to work a few more years and then he's going to be gone, and we're still going to live there and we're still going to have to put up with it. So, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to comment? Does the applicant have any further comments? Okay. Then I think that we could close this matter as a public hearing. I don't think we're going to discuss this evening mainly because I think people here, you probably need to look at the tape from the last meeting. A couple people weren't here. I think Joe and Marcy weren't here. And then John's not here. He can look at the tape at this meeting, and then we can probably bring it up at our next meeting. So then we'll close this matter as a public hearing. We're not going to make a decision on this evening. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to item number 2. And actually, numbers 2 through 8 are all related to the same development. It's 99 Todd's Hill Road, special exceptions, number of special exceptions for interior lots, and also the re-subdivision, 15-lot subdivision. And we opened the hearing and we were continuing it. There were some questions about curb cuts and traffic and stop signs and things like that. And Mr. Pretty, you're ready to proceed, I assume, correct?
Yes. Good evening, Jim Preddy, Bristol Engineering, 420 East Main Street here in Brantford. As you said, this is 99 Todd's Hill Road, roughly 37 acre.
Jim, I'm sorry, I think the camera is saying he pushed you back. No, maybe a little bit that way, yeah. If you could.
So you can get on that camera. Still not on the camera.
Stop being a TV star.
Okay. Hopefully that does it.
He's got to switch the camera. There it is.
Okay, that works.
Yeah, okay, they got you. You see.
switch camera.
Okay.
The property known as 99 Todd's Hill Road, Paris Farm, Todd's Hill, Cherry Hill Road. We were here last time presenting our plan for a total of 15 lots, including the one existing house. It sounded like the majority of the concerns were over the driveways that we had exiting onto Paris Farm Road. We have revised the plan, which we submitted last week, creating a couple of common driveways and rear access to a number of these lots. So basically getting all of the driveways off of Parish Farm Road. So we have a common driveway over here for these two lots and a common driveway here for these two. So those are coming off of Todd's Hill Road now. We still meet all the bulk requirements that are applicable here. I did today hear from the town engineer, and he reminded me that we needed to actually deed property to the town along the road where it's less than 50 feet. We have to hold 25 feet from the center line of the existing road. So what I have, basically it's the same layout, but I worked most of the afternoon cutting the properties off where they need to deed to the town and making sure that all the lots still work. This revised plan again, the only thing that's revised from what you already have is just to address these issues. The one thing I did add to here is that the lots that have areas removed for either easements or fee strips or wetland areas are shown in gross and net areas on there, just to show that the lots still do meet the requirements. The other thing that came up was the stop sign on Parish Farm Road. In speaking to engineering, they weren't aware of why exactly it was removed. Anecdotally, I had heard that it was taken down somewhere in the late 80s, and it possibly was because when you come down over the hill here, you couldn't see the car that was stopped at the bottom. I think that probably could have been handled by a sign at the top that said "Stop ahead," but I wasn't privy to that at the time. My understanding is to be able to get it back, a resident in the neighborhood would have to petition the police commission to get the stop sign back. But that's as far as I could get with that.
What about the open space? Who gets it?
The open space, we have a letter of commitment from the Regional Water Authority that I believe was forwarded to you folks as the adjoiner just to the north. They were very interested in acquiring this piece to add to their existing property.
You maybe stay a little closer to
Yes. Okay. There's a letter of commitment from the Regional Water Authority they've expressed interest to acquire the piece, to add on to their property just north of this.
And I assume, I think the Regional Water Authority may be able to sell off excess land. So if they took this, they would have to take it with a deed restriction, I assume, to ensure that it's open space.
That's correct. I think part of the regulations is that whoever receives it does have to agree to a deed restriction that no development can occur.
Okay. Anything else?
No, those were the outstanding items, I believe, from the last meeting.
Great. Harry, summary of anything?
Sure, and I can pass the letter around if you want to take a look at it. Sure it's happening.
What, just Jim, does it abut against land owned by the Water Authority?
This is the Regional Water Authority.
Okay.
Could you clarify the driveways? Because based on this map, you've got one house accessed by two driveways, here and here.
Is that your sketch?
And how many,
That sketch was, I was looking at a way to actually create a larger common driveway, which,
I mean, to have that one spine
Yeah, unfortunately, you
Make
can
that a
only
town
have,
road and have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah,
6 houses off of it with,
you can have only 4. 4 is the limit, so that's a concept, and that's not even accurate. But you could do it with,
so you'd have 4 for a common driveway and,
you could do 4 and 3 and have one lot on a single driveway. It's possible, but that would require a special exception, approval for each of the common driveways proposed.
do we have any requirements for a minimum number of houses to create a street?
No, not that I know of. I know there's little desire on the town's part to have another street and maintain another road.
But the
So I just say that.
subdivision layout is
Yeah, I mean,
suggesting that
unfortunately, yeah,
you
we're
know,
really,
would alleviate the traffic off of both Todd's Hill Road and Parish Farm, so now you're eliminating, at least 2 driveways.
right.
And then if you did the rear lots from that street, you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you have all 8
Okay.
served by that one street, and to me, that's, an appropriate public use.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying in terms of looking at it. However, my understanding is you've got to deal with the application presented to you. And if there's no way in the regulations, I don't know of any way to say this is wrong. It's really an administrative process, and if it does check all the boxes in the regulations, even though it may not be the best plan in certain respects, it's difficult to justify actually denying it if you're contemplating that.
I'm
So-
just thinking of traffic safety.
No, I totally understand what you're saying. I totally understand. It's just it's not documented that what they're proposing is unsafe. So I think you may want to say for the record some opinion about the site distance of, I was out there and well, actually I wasn't out there, but I've seen it previously and it's pretty wide open coming down around the corner there.
Correct, especially when you're coming down here, this field is very flat, very wide open. It's, you could see around here very well. If we were to do a driveway here, you'd have the same amount of cars basically, or, a road. You'd have the same amount of cars, or actually more. There's a potential there at another lot or two.
What do you mean, another lot or 2?
If we did a road in there, because you'd need only 20,000 for everyone that had frontage, instead of 30 for a rear lot. So the density would actually increase with a road.
But the density would still conform to the zone, though.
Correct.
Right.
But that would also mean a formal detention basin that somebody would have to own, either the town or an association, which is not always in the best interest. And it would mean more wetland regulated area encroachment, because it would have to be down at that end, just because that's downhill. It has just been our experience that over the years that short little dead ends have not been favorably looked at by engineering or public works, and the developer has no interest in doing that for this project at this time.
So if you did the 4 lots off of the common driveway, wouldn't you reconfigure the back 2? I mean, it still looks like you have property lines that are implying that those would be flag lots from Parish Farm Road.
Yeah, their required frontage flag would be in Parish Farm, but their actual access would be off Todd's Hill.
So their address would be here, and then you have the,
Right, there would just be a,
Correct. The driveways are coming from back here. These have to have frontage on a road.
I understand.
So,
But then what about the one to the left, though? That's why that would be a dedicated driveway for the one to the left?
this one here, yes. I mean, we could actually take this driveway off of here too and combine that without a special exception.
Well, I'm just
Right.
saying, if that becomes dedicated frontage with its own driveway, then 1, 2, 3, 4, you could eliminate this here and have the 4 serve, and now you're getting more cars away from the intersection.
you
just
could.
seems like
But that requires a special exception. It requires
Correct.
a desire on the applicant's part to create a common driveway serving 4 houses, and, I mean, there are potential concerns with, everybody in a common driveway, usually, sometimes there's neighbor issues and all those kinds of things develop too, so
So the thought is to
I
do
would
3
imagine
and
concerns
2.
on his part about marketability and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, generally, when you have 2 or 3, it's easier to work out who's taking care of what. You get more and more, it gets more and more difficult, but that's more of a marketing thing than anything else.
So this one would go to this side. And I could ignore this on my sheet based on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there isn't one here.
Okay.
Right.
These two are together, these two are together here. This one comes down, this one could actually go into that one without any other permits required. This house could flip and it could come in that way.
Harry, do you have anything else?
I have some, should you decide to think about approving, I have some proposed conditions for the special exceptions as well as the subdivision. Which I've
Okay.
shared those with Mr. Preddy. I just finished those today, just to have them, but I'll get into that if you want me to later.
Okay. Okay, any questions from commission members? Now we'll open up the public. Members of the public wish to comment? Sure, anyone can come up and take a look, and absolutely. Mr. Horn, why don't you go first, since I bet you know what you want to say. These guys, give them a chance to look at the plans.
For the record, Bill Horn,
What's that?
246 Pleasant Point Road. I just wanted to the question about what the Water Authority could do with the land.
Right?
There's pretty strong statutory restrictions on the selling of Class 1 or Class 2 land, which is anything within the watershed. It's very difficult. I think it has to be offered to conservation organizations or towns for open space. I mean, I realize it's belt and suspenders since you're going to have the easement on it anyway, but there's virtually no chance that the Water Authority would be selling this off.
Okay, great, thank you. Other members of the public? Yes, ma'am?
Susan Keys, 66 Todd's Hill Road. So that's great. A lot of the driveways have been moved off Parish Farm. They're now coming right across the street from my property. My real big concern is the stop sign. My ex-husband is a police officer. He complained about this for years and years and years, right to Chief Holleran. The police commission put the sign back and then removed it, saying it wasn't necessary. I've had cars on my lawn repeatedly. I have a picture of a car that was totaled, okay, at my house the day of Thanksgiving. If this young lady had been sitting in this car, she would have been severely injured or killed. So I don't want to hear that maybe that stop sign's not necessary. It's ridiculous, and the stop sign needs to be there. I also have a major water issue. I'm going to have all these driveways now coming in across from my property. I've spent $8,000 waterproofing my basement. I don't want to have a problem. I want to make sure there's drainage and a stop sign. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to comment? Yes, yes, sir. Sure. Grab a mic and identify yourself for the record. You can.
Can everyone hear me? Yes? Okay. My name is George Adamo. I live at 8 Avon Road here in Brantford, which is nearby this property. So what was changed on the plan? We have an additional driveway this over here, I think, in the lower right-hand corner of this map, which would come out onto Todd's Hill Road. Is that correct?
I mean,
Originally, there was only the one.
There were driveways that came out as Parish Farm over here, another one here, that one,
Okay. Okay, so that means that all these driveways will come out on Todd's Hill.
Right.
One of them will come out here on Cherry Hill. There's a stop sign here, which is regularly ignored. This route down Parish Farm Road and then across Todd's Hill to Cherry Hill Road is a route that's used to cut off an intersection at Route 1 and to cut off a couple of stoplights. So there's actually a good deal of through traffic in this area, not just local traffic. So I think the commission should bear that in mind when they talk about traffic and talk about routing of cars in and out of these properties. My major concern with the plan is, number one, the preservation of the wetlands and the preservation of the migratory habitat for waterfowl that use this on their flyway. I would like to see them continue to use it because I like it when they fly overhead and honk. So I'm glad to hear that it may be the water company that will acquire this property. That addresses one of my concerns. My other major concern with the development is drainage, because this pond overflows, wetting this area, and is supposed to drain through this stream outlet that comes across Cherry Hill in a culvert, and then drains across the water company property and eventually into our drinking water. So preservation of this area is fairly important for the preservation of clean water here in Brantford. But this drainage area here needs to be improved. There's some clogging over here of the culvert, which results in a backup of this pond. And I think the developer, since there are two properties that will be adjoining this water course, the developer needs to improve that and make sure that the drainage from this area, the overflow from the area, is correctly drained away into the water company property and eventually into our drinking water. So that's a major concern for me. In addition to that, you can see by the contour lines here that the center of this part of the property is a prominence, and that there is drainage off this way across Todd's Hill Road, but also across Todd's Hill Road, but also across Cherry Hill Road. There's actually quite a bit of water that runs off this way. It would be really nice if we could get some storm sewer line down here on Todd's Hill. Other than that, I think very careful consideration has to be taken to the drainage in this area. It would be best if it drained back towards the pond, because then the pond could this water course could be improved and the pond would drain, and we'd have correct drainage in this area and preservation of the wetland at the same time. So I hope that the Commission will take that into consideration, take drainage into consideration, and take also into consideration that this is not just local traffic passing through this route. There's quite a bit of through traffic. And in terms of an additional stop sign, that might help. I think that people would probably ignore it the way they do the other one, but you never know, it might help. That's the end of my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. My name is Clara Damel. I'm George's wife. We live at 801 Road, and we are affected by this new development. We've been here for probably close to 35 years, so we've seen a lot of changes in our neighborhood. We're not against growth and development, but we want a good conscience, and that's a very important word these days. I agree, there's a tremendous amount of traffic coming down Parish Farm Road into Todd's Hill at dangerous speeds. I believe that that original stop sign, I know, was changed the direction. I want 3 stop signs, unlike other people, because we have so much foreign traffic. And I would like you to do a study, if that's possible and in your realm, to evaluate the number of people that make turns onto, from what is it, Cedar Street? Right turn onto Parish Farm Road and cut through. They'll cut through and they'll go right down to Route 1 to avoid that corner intersection. It's a heavily trafficked area. And the speed limit is supposed to be 25, but very few of us see it at 25. You've also known that the Cornfield Estates have grown up. There's a lot more children in the area. There's a lot more bus stops. That is another concern. I have another concern over here. We're down this area. You have 2 houses that are going to be built over here on, that is Cherry Hill Road. What is the plan for the fence that goes around at this point? Is this going to be an enclosed or gated community?
Doesn't appear
Any
so.
thoughts
We'll
on it?
ask I doubt it, but we'll ask the developer
Okay.
representative to address that.
Yeah, I think that's important in terms of the I guess, the visuals and the safety of it. You'll notice that the fence is quite dilapidated at many points. In addition, I feel that we actually need sidewalks. There's a lot of walking and running traffic. This area over here is nice and flat, but if you actually looked at a contour, you would discover that when you go up, the people coming down Parish Farm Road cannot see the runners who go up that road and the women who walk their babies in carriages. It's very dangerous. So I'm asking for a few things. I don't mind the development because a lot of people like Branford, but you need to think about those of us who live here. And you don't want to be responsible for any dangerous accidents that take place because not enough foresight was given. And I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Other members of the public? Yes, sir.
My name is Perry Mariska. I live in Brantford. I've been doing business with the Vigliotti firm for years. I just want to say that they're a reputable company. They've built multiple developments in Brantford and surrounding towns. I'm sure most of you know that already. They have built many properties here in town apartments, and thereby they're one of the major taxpayers in Brantford. The residents of Brantford, they're not going to build this and get out of Dodge, so they will be doing this in a responsible manner. They built Cosgrove Court and the other homes on Cherry Hill Road in the past few years, and I trust that their intentions are to add to the neighborhood with additional good families. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to address this?
Want to speak into this? I'm Jane Vaughn. I live on 74 Tots Hill Road. I am also very concerned about the stop signs, and there originally, 35 years ago, were 3 stop signs on that originally, and there used to be actually a little island in between, which used to slow traffic down, but there were also accidents then. Also, when the last time we were here was like 4 weeks ago, they brought up the cul-de-sac and how the town didn't want to take on another road. But do you guys have proof about that? Because I heard differently. And also, why not do it right? I mean, 4 houses off of 1 driveway or 3 driveways? I don't know. I have a bad feeling about that. That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to comment? Is the applicant, where's the applicant's representative? Would you like to respond to the public comments?
Yes. There's a lot of talk about the stop signs and the through traffic here. And, I don't know that no matter what we do here, there's anything we could really do about that. My understanding is that to get the stop signs back, the resident has to petition for it. So I don't know that there's any way for me to address that. I don't disagree that there may be an existing a problem with people coming down Parish Farms Road. Having been by there many times, I guess I get it. It probably is a cut through because of the going down Todd's Hill Road is very difficult to get out of there. The drainage.
Is it a resident or a property owner?
A resident is
Okay.
what my understanding. A resident of the area, someone in that neighborhood.
Okay. I assume, though, that you would not oppose it, and you'd probably support if a petition were made.
Absolutely, and it's not the cost of putting the stop sign in, it's a police issue.
Right.
As far as the drainage, I mean, if you really look at this plan, all these contours are heading, the reason why there's so much wetland back here and these ponds are here is because this all heads into, none of this property drains off across the road. This all drains into the property. So there was someone that spoke over here, and that's nothing from this development would be running out across the road. It would all be going toward the back. The fence, I can't speak for the RWA. I think generally they fence their properties. But I don't know the answer to that. We would be taking the fence down everywhere the new properties are. But as far as where the, over here near the pond where the RWA would, or presumably the RWA would own the property, I don't know whether they would take the fence down or not. I know other properties in town that they own, there are fences. So, I think that was it. Most of the questions were traffic related or stormwater related.
Are there any sightline issues with the new configuration you have?
I don't believe so. Not now. Not right now. All the trees that are all along here, are, with the exception of a couple over here on this side, are far enough back so that when the property line gets moved back, that they'll still be inside. They'll be out of the right of way, so they won't be likely taken down by the town. But I believe it because they're set back, because there is power lines on the road. Because they're set back, I believe that the sight lines are okay. And this is all wide open here right now, so you could see down around here. And it's flat, and when you come down Parish Farm Road, you're looking down into that. So you can see quite a bit around that corner right now.
Well, I think one of the public comments concerned a culvert that may be clogged coming off of the pond. Do you know anything about that?
This pond does drain through, there's a channel here and a culvert that goes under Cherry Hill Road. At the time that we start to do anything out here, we can meet with the new wetland enforcement officer and come up with the best way to clean that out, I guess. It sounds like it's probably a maintenance issue.
Okay. Any questions from commission members?
What do the regs call for in terms of sidewalks under that zone?
Well, it depends what the town plan shows. So this is not in a priority sidewalk area. I mean, I don't know if you're limited to that. I'm going to have to frankly go read the words here because we don't do enough subdivisions. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think it does refer you back to the plan. It says the commission may require that sidewalks be provided with any subdivision or re-subdivision, and it says the guidance for when sidewalks should be provided can be found in the plan of conservation development. It seems to be envisioning them more on new streets created by a subdivision, but that's not necessarily the case. But
Anytime we've ever done a new road, we've had to put them on both sides.
Is there any language about how many lots constitute a I mean, it's really adding the second lot, but I mean, at what point does the number of lots start to drive the notion of putting streets in?
if there isn't any, I mean, the regs are set up to frankly allow this. So they do allow for frontage lots, which is typically what they're called, and rear lots. So
Right,
this is
but
a very
the
creative
area-
use of the regulations I will grant you, but.
Well, yeah, that's my issue, is because
Yeah.
you've got a very large parcel of land, you've got open wetlands that have been mowed for years.
Yep.
You know, there's all kinds of opportunities to do different things here that could, storm water quality basin in a traditional subdivision with the street could do a lot to take traffic off the street. It's not my job to design it, but
Right.
I've seen enough to know it's possible when you have a lot of this size. And I'm just concerned that our regulations, we're proposing to the least costly solution. And, personally, I'd like to see a more comprehensive look at this. And, if funding is an issue of paying for the roads, but you can get more lots, well, why not go through that exercise? I mean, Mr. Vigliotti is a very competent and capable builder, and, he knows the numbers of what he would need to do to offset that issue. And, I haven't seen anything in the town, that says to not have more streets. I mean, is our public works, department taxed, or is it a matter of not creating cul-de-sacs? So is there a way to do a through road here?
These are all questions, right?
This is what I don't see
Right.
having That's
Right.
my concern.
No, I hear what you're
So-
saying, yeah.
So the zone calls for sidewalks or doesn't call
If-
for sidewalks?
It's up to you. It allows you to do it, but it refers you to plans conservation development, which does not call for sidewalks in this area. But it doesn't chisel you into that.
Okay.
What's the developers, what do you say to sidewalks? What would you say to that?
Kind of thought we had discussed this at the last meeting, but we hadn't proposed any here because there aren't any continuations on
Right.
either road. And I did look at the POCD, and it's not an area that's, they're pushing it. Again, if we were, anywhere we've done a new road, it's an automatic. We've always put it in, but typically, any developments with frontage, it's been a judgment call.
Speak in.
It's been a judgment call whether or not, it fits into the plan or if it makes sense with other sidewalks in the area. Really, it's
When
been up to you guys.
When you look at sidewalks and subdivision, it's, as a street becomes more heavily trafficked, which I'm hearing this is, then, the need for sidewalks tends to arise. And so it's kind of like, if I were to see a plan that took all those houses and created a new street, I wouldn't feel compelled to say, and you need to do sidewalks. I would be thrilled that that little subdivision off of one U Street or two cul-de-sacs or whatever you came up with was getting all those driveways off of a through street. Logically, if we were to require sidewalks, where are we taking them to? To the school, towards Brushy Plains Road? Is that the intent? Or are you trying to connect the sidewalks down to Route 1? I mean,
The closest one I know of is Brushy Plain Road, where
right.
it goes
So,
up pretty
I mean,
far, but that's about it.
So to me, that begs, get the driveways off the main road with a better plan solution.
I know going this way toward Brushy Plain Road, I don't believe on the west side you'd be able to build them.
Just
That's a grade, not-
topographically, I don't think.
Yeah,
you'd
no,
be
I
able-
understand.
yeah.
So it would be a sidewalk to nowhere?
Essentially.
It would.
I can't, yeah.
And then down Cherry Hill Road, goes quite a ways, and I think there's only 2 houses that go down there. It's mostly water company property.
Well, you've got the whole Avon development that doesn't have sidewalks.
That's
but
right
it's-
here, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? I mean, there's a concern, there's people across, a major concern is drainage. Has the town engineers reviewed this as well? Did they? And it
He has
went through
reviewed
wetlands?
it, but he has not been asked, as far as I know, to review the drainage pattern, understanding what Mr. Purdy just related, that everything drains to the pond and the pond drains out, as we just described, under Cherry Hill Road. Now, if there's a bottleneck because of a lack of maintenance, that could be something
That
the
could be
applicant
easily
does, or
addressed.
you
It could
could,
be a
yeah, be
condition.
addressed. It's an ongoing issue, and
Keep in mind that we do have to provide stormwater storage for each lot, on each lot, and I think that's why the town engineer hasn't required anything more. We're not adding a road, so we're not adding catch
Right.
basins and pipes and.
yeah, there's very little impervious surface being added
Right.
by the subdivision.
But he did review what was proposed, correct?
Absolutely.
He did.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's why we adjusted the street line.
Right.
Was one of the comments.
Any other questions or comments from anyone? Anything else from the applicant?
That's it.
Okay, then we can close these matters as a public hearing. Again, these are matters 2 through 9, the subdivision, the re-subdivision, and the special exception and the re-subdivision. That brings us to item number 10. David Diatri, 3 Elms Road, special exception and revisions for a building. Is the applicant ready on that one? Is there another, we closed the public hearing. We may talk about it later this evening.
Did that first, and they want to continue, they want to continue with that testimony on the 20th.
Is this set up in the camera zone? I can't.
I think you will be fine
When
at your
you flip it
location,
over.
I think.
There
Yep,
you
you're
go.
fine
Yeah,
with it.
there you go.
Okay. For the record, my name is Thomas A. Stevens. I'm a professional engineer and land surveyor, office at 141 Durham Road in Madison. I'm here on behalf of Dr. and Mrs. Biatri, who are behind me. With me also is John Cunningham from TEC Landscape Architecture. I made 5 handouts, which won't be enough, but sharing will solve it. You might have this information already, I don't know.
We'll share.
I've got an extra copy if anybody wants one.
Sure. Yeah, you should have everything except for, I think, the front sheet already.
Four Three Elm Road is a parcel located on the north side of Three Elm Road. It is immediately to the east of the post office. It's bordered on the north by Squaw Brook. Residential properties to the north, residential properties to the east, and residential properties across Three Elm Road. Parcel is zoned R2. It's 0.62 acres. We are here for applications for special exception and coastal site plan approval. The coastal resources are a special flood hazard area. I've highlighted my copy in blue. The flood hazard area is AE 12, which is to the north of the blue line. The shorelands are the adjacent areas in excess of the elevation 12. There's shorelands to the east, shorelands on the property, and shorelands to the south. Tidal wetlands are to the northeast corner of the property, and they diminish and stop, and then it goes into the actual watercourse of Squaw Brook, which then flows westerly. The proposed grading shown on this plan is being proposed to accommodate the installation of a septic system. So if you flip to your second page, your second sheet, a smaller scale, it's a 20 scale plan versus the 10 scale plan, but what is shown is a proposed septic system which is to accommodate the apartments. There's 7 apartments, a total of 11 bedrooms. We've received local and state health department approvals. I have those to enter as an exhibit if you don't have it in the file. Would you like those approvals, or they live in your file already?
I think we have them, but if you have a copy, I'll take it. Thank you.
Did you say there were 7 apartments or 7 bedrooms?
There's 7 apartments with a total of 11 bedrooms.
Okay.
I'm going to live with this plan as long as you'd like to see it, but basically it's a brand-new septic tank is going to the southeast corner of the building. And there are septic fields shown in dark blue, and then there's grading shown beyond the septic system, which is necessary in order to install it. If you look at the bottom of that page, you'll notice there's a cross-section of the proposed septic system, and there's fill varying from inches up to the maximum of 2 feet. I've used the larger scale cover sheet because there's far less detail, it's far less distraction, and it shows a better definition of these proposed grades relative to the coastal resources. John Cunningham's going to discuss the wetland enhancements to the northeast corner of the site and the plantings and landscape buffer adjacent to the tidal wetlands. So the dark lines are proposed contours. The northernmost dark line is elevation 6. The next contour up is elevation 8, elevation 10, and elevation 12. The upper elevations are pretty much existing grade. The lower elevations result in the 2 feet of filling at the most. Proposed 4,000-gallon septic tank in the fields are as shown on the second sheet. There's a retaining wall, a timber retaining wall at the southeast corner of the lot. Extends in about 33 feet. I'm sorry, we're going to continue that wall with a stone rubble wall for an additional 33 feet. And from thence, it'll be a split rail fence, which will continue down to the high tide line, which is elevation 4.4. The split rail fence will be independent of the wall for the bulk of it, the distance, but the new wall will have the fence set in the middle of it. The face of the wall will be set on the property line. The handout was an answer to a question about the sequence of construction. That talks about construction entrance at the southwest corner of the site. The truck traffic will be onto the site from that southwest corner to the east. And at the end of the project, that construction entrance would be removed.
Okay. Is there a note about this wall going down on the neighbor's property line here? Because I don't see anything where it indicates that's going to be
It is
a
not
wall
called out
on
on
the
the
legend.
plan. It could be.
It's not on the legend either.
It is not.
Okay, we need a, because I did not know that.
That's
now.
that's been there about 1 day. So
Okay.
You wouldn't have that.
So this
Actually,
is a
that should-
revision? This is not the 1/31/20 revision? Is this a later revision date?
It should have had its own revision date for that item.
So it's a later revision, there's a revision 2 that should be on the block here?
That's correct, thank you.
Okay.
That'd be retaining wall southeast corner. I did the construction notes as a sequence, as notes, so I wouldn't revise the plan. I should have done the same with the wall. It's
Okay.
better, actually,
No, I'm just trying to track the revisions in the
Yep.
plan, in the file, that's all.
that plan has been revised as revision 2
Okay.
then to reflect the wall
All right.
and the split rail fence. Are you in receipt of Carol Szymanski's letter?
Yes.
There is a loose item on that. There's a question about the granite, called a sluice way, or retaining wall along Squaw Brook. The granite stones that were placed. And her question was that a permitted activity? In my research, I have another exhibit which shows a 2-foot granite wall, which has been in place since 1970, which preceded tidal, I don't know what tidal wetlands, certainly preceded inland wetland regulations. That wall has been pointed, but it's been in place since prior to 1970. That shows on exhibit number 2.
And it's right behind you.
Oh, there we go. Dr. Diatri had pointed this portion of the wall across the street, which is the neighboring wall, hasn't been repaired at all, but that's the only touch that's gone on that wall relative to the wall. So short answer, no, it was never permitted. It's been grandfathered, in my opinion. If there are no questions about the grading relative to the septic, I'd like to have John Cunningham talk about what's being proposed adjacent to the tidal wetland.
Could you address the drainage and looks like you're proposing a swale? I don't know if you addressed that previously? All right.
There are concerns about the water going onto the neighboring property, and that's part of the reason for continuing the wall. We're going from the timber wall to a stone wall, and then it's going to be a swale, as shown on the plans. These V-shaped contours are going to direct the water down to the tidal wetlands where it's going today versus letting it go onto the neighbor's property.
Could I ask a question at this point?
Sure.
Just about, there was a comment, I think, at a previous public hearing from the neighbor about water coming down 3 Elms Road, and at the point where it, you get to at the most eastern corner, I guess, of the lot. I'm going to come up for a second. Is this working? Okay. Right about here, this wall is so low that the road surface is actually higher than the edge of the wall now. I would imagine because of pavement piling up over the years on the town road. But there is, I don't know if this is in fact the case, but water could flow from the road on the property towards the tidal wetland down here, particularly if this is all going to be open. It might be preferable if that's raised a bit so you don't have road runoff adding to the water going across the fill into the wetland.
I don't think that would be an issue. I think that you'd be willing to take the wall to the east of the property along the roadway, elevate it slightly to act as a curb, carry the stormwater beyond your property. Dr. Diatri, for the record. They're talking about raising it here, David, along this portion so it doesn't jump onto the property. Either would do it, just so it acts as a curb here to wherever it has free flow without wanting to come onto your property. That's amenable.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would be careful of that tree and adding too much fill over it.
This tree is going to be in such
other-
proximity to
The-
down here.
That one.
I think the amount of fill we're talking is curb height
Okay.
would do
Okay.
what we're talking about. I think the 3 trees will be eliminated ultimately, these 2, and this is Norway maple, which is on the state's wanted list. They want to get rid of them. It's like Phragmites to the state, so that's the 3rd removal. This is a carryover from the earlier landscaping plan. John's going to come up with a new plan, which is far more detailed. A lot of Latin names, a lot of shrubs. The 2 key trees here, though, are going to remain in place. We're not disturbing them. Our closest disturbance toward the wetland is this northernmost line. Any questions? John, you want to have at it?
Thank you very much, Don. The state unwanted list or whatever you say. Good evening. My name is John Cunningham. I'm going to pass out some photographs so you can actually physically look at that wetland area.
Thanks.
Thank you.
For record.
So this is right here.
Once again, my name is John Cunningham. I'm the owner of TEC Landscape Design Incorporated. We've been in business for 35 years in the town of Madison, located at 62 Wall Street. And I'm also a 30-year member of the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission. So thank you for all your time today. My office didn't have time to come up with really a full-blown landscape plan. I just worked on the area that I thought was most concerned to the board. Okay, you can see my green area back here. I made some very simple notes. I do a lot of wetland presentations in all the different towns around here. My one big thing is to remove an invasive that does not want to be there. The Phragmites really wants to be removed. Tom mentioned about the Norway maple. It's on the invasive list also, or the unwanted list. Norway maple is not in great shape. Okay, the big elm is. We'd like to keep the elm. It's out of the way. It's not in the way of any of the grading and the septic. There's also a very large dawn redwood. I think both of those trees could stay. I would remove all the invasive material, all the Phragmites, root mass and all. That doesn't mean just cutting it down. That means taking or trying to get the most root mass that you can back out of the area. Fresh soil would be brought back in, and then we're going through plenty of plant material to soften that area. If everyone remembers me from Branford Subaru, I did that for Bob Alvine. Plant material to me is a scale. It has to work into scale in the back in each different area. My green along the lawn area is a native form of juniper, just common rapanda. So it's going to grow to about 12 inches tall. It's going to help the water that's moving down the lawn getting towards the brook or that wetland area. I've also suggested a low form of Amelanchier, called running serviceberry. It's a terrific plant. It's native also. Okay? It's going to be behind the juniper. Behind that is probably going to be Comptonia or sweet fern. Okay? And at the back of the property is going to be bayberry. Okay? I also introduced one perennial. I like to use Joe Pye weed. It's a terrific plant. It grows anywhere. If you have any problem areas on your property, put some Joe Pye weed in. It will do fine. All native material. It'll all start to develop into a natural buffer, slowing water down, acting as a buffer where all that Phragmites is right now.
So are you essentially banding the heights up as you get away from it?
Yes, correct. It's actually a very nice backyard.
Yeah,
It was the first time I had been on that road in Stony Creek. I've done some work down at the other end. It's a very nice piece of property. One personal note, I've known Mr. Diatri for 10 to 15 years. I'm also vice chair of the Historic District Commission in Guilford. He put together one of the best projects in downtown Guilford, the old Shoreline Times building. And everything that he presented, or we presented to the town, he actually did everything above and beyond what he did do. So I'm sure that if this is approved, it will be exactly as we have said here tonight.
Is it, you know, I'm looking at the 2-to-1 slope as creating quite a separation between the septic area and the planted area. I mean, is there any way to do that, make that a little bit softer so that the lawn, or are they trying to have a, just minimize the fill in an upland review area or something?
I think the area from the new elevation of the septic system, I think the lawn will just roll down. I kept my material behind Tom's erosion control fence.
Right, he just lists this as 2-to-1 slope, which just feels kind of steep.
That is a little bit steep.
It's not even permitted under the regs. 3-to-1 is the limit. So that would have to be adjusted.
Okay, we could adjust that. We could easily move the bed line back up.
I don't think it affects your planting. I think it's just a matter of softening from the high side of the septic towards the bed line. I don't think it's going to even reach.
Okay.
You know, it's just a matter of moving that contour out a little bit and adding a little more fill, perhaps.
Okay. I apologize. That's something that got past me in my office, but I'm sure Tom's office can take care of it.
In terms of landscaping you're proposing adjacent to the tidal wetland, and the plans, of course, is the edge of the wetland, and the Phragmites is outside the defined tidal wetland boundary that you were going to remove?
The Phragmites, where my finger is, on the, let's say, the building side of the CJL line, that's what we'd like to remove. We're not going into the wetland area.
Okay, good, because you understand there's a planting and the whole approval with DEP, of course, right?
Correct.
And you're using plugs, or as opposed to, you're going to put in plugs or actual shrubs as opposed to doing a seed bank or anything? Okay.
All the material we're putting in is all 1 and 2 gallon material. Okay. It's all locally grown at Summerhill Nurseries in Madison, Connecticut.
Yep.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Anything else, Mr. Stevens? Harry, comments?
Sure. Just to get it out of the way, it's a couple, let me read the comments from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection to the record as they've requested and as we're required to do. This is a letter dated February 5th, 2020 to the Commission. Dear Commissioners, thank you for referring this coastal site plan review received January 28, 2020 to us for review and comment. Project description, The subject site is a 26,421 square foot waterfront lot with frontage on Squaw Brook and tidal wetlands. The current zoning is R2. The lot hosts an existing 7-unit multifamily residence and 13 parking spaces. The property owner has previously added significant amounts of fill to the site in an attempt to regrade and flatten the sloping lot, including fill in the tidal wetlands, which was removed under an order from Connecticut DEP. The current application is to bring in fill for an engineered septic system. There is an approval from the local health department for the additional fill. It appears that the fill is extensive and starts near the street line with the new elevation of 12 and grades down to new elevation 6. The commission should determine whether the extensive amount of fill is necessary or excessive. Has the existing flood and erosion control wall abutting Squaw Brook and the tidal wetlands been approved previously by the Planning and Zoning Commission? Question mark. Coastal resources include coastal hazard area AE12, tidal wetlands, and shorelands. Under the heading tidal wetlands, the site hosts significant tidal wetlands as well as a brook, and the property owner is reminded to keep fill and debris out of the tidal wetlands and the brook. Tidal wetlands are under the direct jurisdiction of the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. The property owner was previously cited by Connecticut DEP for illegal fill in the tidal wetlands and submitted a restoration plan to remove the fill and restore the functionality of the tidal wetlands. Tidal wetlands are among the most highly productive and biologically diverse systems, enhancing water quality by trapping sediments, reducing turbidity, restricting passage of toxics and heavy metals, stabilizing shorelines, buffering erosion, and buffering storm and wave energy, among many other uses, making tidal wetlands highly worthy of our protection. It is essential that before any fill is brought into the site that the applicant install erosion and sediment control measures such as silt fencing or hay bales to protect the tidal wetlands and the brook. The applicant should call the town's inland wetlands agent for an inspection after the ENS controls are properly installed before any fill is brought on site. If fill is stockpiled on a site for any period of time, the stockpile should be ringed by hay bales and seeded to prevent erosion. Conclusion. We hope that these comments are helpful to the Commission pursuant to CGS Section 22A-110. We request these comments be read into the record at a public hearing for this application. If we can be of any further assistance to you in this or any other coastal management or Long Island Sound related matter, please feel free to contact me at 860-424-3138. Sincerely, Carol Szymanski, Environmental Analyst 2, Land and Water Resources Division, Bureau of Water Protection and Land Resource, DEP. Okay. Should also mention that this application went to the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board as required under the Stony Creek Village District. They met informally in December and made some comments. Were generally supportive of the changes to the building elevation and the addition into the rear. The roof is being raised. I don't know if those aspects of the plan have really been discussed yet, but probably should be presented, not by me, so I'll stop right there. But I will say that at its meeting last night, the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board did formally recommend approval to the Commission, subject to an agreement that the applicant would return to the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board with the final details of the siding and the roofing and other aspects of the final appearance of the building. There's been some information received recently this week, which I have not, unfortunately, have not been able to chance to review in any detail. One element's been the landscaping plan that was discussed a few minutes ago. I'm going to go up to the board, though, and I'm going to make a couple of comments about other items. And it was mentioned that this is not a full landscaping plan, but there are other requirements in the regs and other concerns I have. I'll just show you what I'm thinking of. So, with the tree removal, and I understand in the past, other vegetation along the property line or the yard here to the east has been eliminated. There is a requirement for side yard landscaping that has not yet been addressed here that should be addressed to provide some buffer to the adjoining property owner. Also, the post office building is about here, but there's an area here where you've got the existing parking lot. This is just the situation. It shines out into the adjoining property. I mean, it could be addressed by some kind of low hedge if you could squeeze that in here, or some other element that would block those headlights and provide a little screen. There is almost no area that's going to be available for front yard landscaping. There is a requirement for that. This is an existing situation. There's a couple of fairly significant shrubs here. I'm not sure what they are, but that could be augmented slightly here, and maybe this line, I think. Is this tree going down here? Do you know, John?
The maple?
Or is it?
That's right with the septic.
This-
That's through the septic tanks proposed, I think.
So this one's going?
I think it's gone.
All right. So it may be adding, something in here. The only other landscaping element is this retaining wall. At the moment, there's gravel right up to the wall. And I believe the dumpster for the site is right here at the edge of the retaining wall as well, which is really not an ideal situation in terms of anything leaking out of the dumpster into the brook. So that, of course, should be relocated and have an enclosure, preferably. Also establishing a vegetated buffer here for runoff going down the gravel parking lot to kind of filter that before it hits the tidal brook would be preferable. And I understand that the 7 units will be converted to 6, is that correct? So that could potentially result in a reduction of required parking spaces. You have 13 here, which is set for the 7-unit building and compliant. But if 2 spaces be eliminated, that would provide a larger area for vegetative buffer, possibly a little more room here for some landscaping as well. The other element I mentioned in my staff report, I think the major element is the need for an erosion and sedimentation control plan. So we need the full plan. I don't believe that's been done yet, but maybe you correct me if I'm wrong.
There's some notations for riprap.
What we have shown is silt fence around the entire proposed fill area. Extending from the post office across the entire northern portion of the site and down to the end of the existing wall, and details for staked hay bales and silt fence. We haven't gone beyond that, but the notes, the construction sequence, it calls for all of that being installed before any construction takes place, and that will stay in place until we think it's been stabilized and the town agrees. Then the silt fence will be removed.
So is there the narrative that's required for that? I don't see that anywhere.
There is no narrative. We could add
Okay.
one for.
Yeah, you should take a look at our regulations to make sure everything's been addressed and.
That'll be revision 3 I see coming.
Okay. I think some statements have been made. I'd probably address what I was looking for in terms of statement about drainage not being directed to the adjoining property. So I believe on the record from Mr. Stevens is probably adequate. There's no lighting submitted at this point. I think there is some being considered, but that could be addressed possibly in a condition so that.
Any lighting for the parking lot?
Potentially some added lighting. I mean, you could defer that to me, as you often do, just to make sure it's compliant with the regulations, but that's not on the plan at the moment. I don't think anything's been identified in terms of, a couple of trees have been mentioned as to come down to be replaced, so those would need to be specified on the plan with respect to the significant tree requirements in our regulations. So if there's anything larger than 12 inches in diameter, that needs to be noted as either to be retained, and then there's a requirement for a Connecticut licensed arborist, possibly should the commission direct, to submit information on how that tree will be preserved, particularly with fill being added. I think we talked previously about trying to create wells around a couple of the trees. Those trees are probably, my understanding, will go because of the impact to them from installing a septic. But trees that are to be removed that are 12 inches or greater definitely need to be noted on the plan to comply with the regs. I think those are most of the high points. There, of course, is section 6.8, and that's one reason the application is before you, is because you're within 100 feet of tidal wetland. So any grading in that area requires section 6.8 approval. And, there's requirements about stockpiling topsoil, for example, and requirements of the contractor and how they go about doing the fill. and establishing cover for the fill. So some other additional items here, but I don't think they need to go through every little detail of it at this point, but those are the major items.
Thank you, Harry. Questions from commission members? Before we open to the public, did you want to say anything else or say anything about the architectural revisions?
They submitted a sketch.
Right, I didn't know if the applicant didn't even mention it, but
I'm not well versed in it, but basically existing stairways and deck to the west of the building are going to be removed, which will reduce the footprint. There's second floor balconies being proposed. There's first level patio and deck. The street view is the south elevation, which is to the top left. The west elevation is standing at the post office area and looking toward the structure. What's now is stairway up and a large deck that goes the entire length of the building is being removed, being shortened. There'll be 2 second floor balconies on that view. There'll be a second floor balcony on the street side view along with a patio up here, which will serve as part of the curbing we talked about. The north elevation is standing in Swabrook looking back at the property. There's an upper deck here off the end of a proposed apartment, another deck up in this location. East elevation is from the fence where we're putting the new wall side, and once again there's an upper deck outside an apartment. And the decks to the right are facing towards Swabrook. This is the plan that went to the back, I think, last night.
Right.
For their approval.
So where are the primary entrance, on the west elevation and the
Primary entrance on the west side, on the post office side.
west and east?
That would be the west elevation, this one.
That's the primary, and then the secondary is on the east?
Yeah, we have an entrance on both sides of the building.
West and east?
Yes.
And do all the apartments exit off of that spine?
Yes.
I will say that the Stony Creek Architecture Review Board was very enthusiastic about the potential changes to the building in terms of the appearance.
It's track.
And one other thing I should probably mention is the addition to the rear. My understanding that's being proposed because of the need to remove some utilities from the basement because of flood management regulation compliance.
Was that that
Utility
laundry?
location proposed for this addition. Also, the slab underneath will be at elevation 10, which is still below flood level of 12, but there'll be 7 vents installed. That'll be for kayak, canoes, fishing poles, that kind of storage. It can't be for habitation or use other than, it won't be parking, so it'll be boat storage and probably personal belongings of any of the folks in the building that have a place to store.
Has East Shore Health gone through all the septic with the laundry?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, they
Flushing
just...
to that as well as the apartment? I mean, I'm assuming it has.
East Shore went through it, they bumped it up to the state went through it.
Yes, we have a letter from the State Department of Public Health, and I think, again, I understand this is actually technically a repair to the septic.
This is a repair. They call it a non-compliant repair
Right.
because it's not all natural soil, but every bit of natural soil we could use, we did. The rest is select fill that we're bringing in for the system.
It's a pretty extensive review.
anything else from the applicant before we open it up to the public? Are you with the applicant? Are you? Or,
No, I'm not happy.
oh, okay. Okay.
Public.
Well, okay. Nothing else from the applicant. Then we'll open up to the public. Any member of the public wish to comment?
You can go there, wherever you want.
Thank you. My name is Peter Custer. I own the property directly across the street from this building. You people have granted my approval for my barn and so forth with some conditions that still need to be addressed and so forth. And I apologize for not being able to do that for the last month or so because I've been in the hospital and all kinds of, I'm sick for a month and a half.
Hopefully you're feeling better.
Anyway, but I just wanted to say how much I approve of this plan here because it does so much to enhance the neighborhood, and I mean it's a really nice improvement, and that's all I can say. I've been living there since 1982, and I've watched that building basically just be a box, and it's a lot nicer now, and I just think it makes a lot of practical sense, and so I approve of it for whatever it's worth.
Great. Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to comment? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Chesler. I live at 83 Elms Road, adjacent to the property of 43 Elms.
To the right.
David and Connie, I know it's been a long battle here. That we haven't meant it to be that way. I'm thrilled to see that that the landscaping plan and the protection of the wetlands, that was our major concern from the very beginning regarding this. And if this landscaping plan is instituted, then we're absolutely fine with everything else. That's always been the issue from the beginning. I appreciate that you're keeping the last living elm tree, as far as we know, on the shoreline. And I hope everything will be done to protect that elm tree. Not the elm. Yeah, the elm. Yeah, the elm. And certainly, if you're going to put Joe Pyeweed in, please come over to our property and take some. We've got more than we can. We're digging it out and replanting it over in the other part of the marsh. So we have plenty of Joe Pyeweed that we'd be happy to share with you, as well as some other native plants. So we're all good with that. I do have one question about. I know that the arborvitae that we planted are on your property. We were given permission at the time when we planted them it was about 2001, I believe, by the previous owner of the building. At the time, he had hemlocks that had been killed by the hemlock disease that had gone through Connecticut. And we asked him permission if we removed the hemlocks, if we could plant arborvitae, and he said that was okay. So I don't know how that affects the septic, or if are they going to stay? I mean, those we paid for them and put them in, and I don't.
The septic is on the opposite side of the lawn from that arborvitae.
Yeah, it won't. Okay, then so the arborvitae will stay.
We have a fully developed landscape plan on that side, so I have to prefer to go.
Well, I know you said you're extending the wall, which I know that would probably eliminate at least one arborvitae, but I don't know.
Probably like to go down and just take a look at the condition of the arborvitae
Okay.
and see how the rest of the plan can look into that before I.
Okay, sure. I'd be happy to meet with you. So I think that's everything. Based on this site plan, they have our approval. And like I said, we have spent literally tens of thousands of dollars clearing out the arborvitae, not the arborvitae, Phragmites that were previously filled, that we didn't even know there was a creek back there when we bought our property back in 1999. So we have spent a lot of money on both sides of the creek protecting that wetlands in that area. And so that's been our major concern from the beginning. So we appreciate the support of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to comment? Does the applicant want to respond to any of the public comments? It sounds like we need to continue this in light of the issue, that additional landscaping and other things that Harry had reviewed. Does that sound right? Is that okay with the applicant? Am I missing something? Harry, does that sound right?
I think that makes sense, so hopefully be prepared, I'd be prepared with a staff recommendation, assuming information comes in at the next meeting, so potentially could be voted on the 20th, even if the hearing's continued.
I mean, it did sound like you did, that we would need to look to ensure that the additional landscaping, the 2-to-1 slope, that there was changes in slope.
Right.
There is a number of details that I thought would require plan changes or additional information. Does that make sense?
Makes absolute sense. My only question was, if those are specific enough details, is that something that should be done administratively?
It couldn't be done administratively, but I could put it in conditions, but at this point, by the time that was all drafted and presented to the commission, you'd be at the 2/20 meeting anyway. So it's probably easier if you can make, if it's something you can make the adjustments about them now and finalize the plan, that's certainly preferable, I think. And I don't think it's going to change your time frame at all.
Yeah, what we're talking about doing is tabling this till the 2/20 meeting, to give us a chance to change the 3-on-1 slopes, give John a chance to get the trees, the landscaping laid out, dumpster moved, the punch list that they just went through. We would put that on the plans and bring it back in 2 weeks.
Will there be another public hearing then?
Well, it'd be continued, but at that point, it could be closed and,
Public hearing is closed, but this is for
No, we'd actually keep the public hearing open, and
Until the
because
20th.
we actually, if it's new information, we should probably accept it while the public hearing's open.
right.
That's fine.
So the public hearing will be closed on the 20th, but the commission could vote and act on it potentially that night. So it won't
Right.
delay you any further, is what I'm trying to say.
Right, yeah, get the stuff to quick as
We'll
you
be
can.
working on it the 19th.
Right.
Or maybe earlier even.
Right.
Excuse me, and in terms of Carnegie Entry, in terms of a timetable, if this were to be approved in 2 weeks, and we've been waiting a very long time to start work on this project, would we then be able to start work on the project?
Well, you'd have to record the approval because it's a special exception, then you would certainly need all your building permits and so forth. So, I mean, given all that, yes.
We do have a permit already for the septic.
Yes, there is a permit for the septic already.
Right. But you can't actually begin work until the Planning and Zoning Commission approves it, and then you actually have to file it in the land records.
Yes,
And get a,
yes.
you know, there may be other requirements I don't know based on, you know, if all the information comes in and there's no more details left hanging, yes, but if a few things would need to be modified in the plan after the approval, then that would need to be done also.
But if it is approved in 2 weeks, that's very favorable to first move forward.
Yeah, I think that's the major hurdle, and then you're well on your way, and you're question getting final permits from
For
the
the
building
architecture.
official and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, if I were your attorney, I would say, wait till the notice gets published and the appeal period expires, and then start.
Just to get a general sense of.
Right. Sure. Okay, so then we'll continue this matter as a public hearing to our February 20th meeting. Thank you. That brings us to items number 11 and 12, which is items that we've heard this before, but had some modifications. I think we approved 2 of the 3 lots, and there's a third one that's what
Yes.
this is about, I believe.
There was, the common driveway proposed, turns out needed a special exception approval, so that has been applied for and is the subject of the public hearing tonight. And you also did not approve the third lot because of the same reason.
Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering, yeah, it's exactly as Harry said. We had presented this as a 3-lot subdivision, we always named it something else. So it was approved as a 2-lot. We made this note that says not an approved building lot, and we're basically here to take that note off the plan. Subsequently, we have filed so that the owner could work on the process of closing this because he had a buyer for this front lot. We filed the Mylar, which we signed just a week ago, showing this not as approved building lot. So this would, everything was addressed, the pins, the signature block, everything had been addressed on here. So this would just get a revision with that note taken off, and this would need to get signed and filed, also in land records.
And why didn't we approve it the first time? What was missing?
Because there's a, under the common driveway thing, if you have more than two served off one common driveway, you need a special exception for that by itself.
Okay.
Even though each one of these is already a special exception.
Yeah, okay.
So this was removed in the short term, now we're putting it back.
Okay.
Just to let the process happen.
Harry, any comments?
Sure. Even though we're not in the correct order on the agenda because I did not put it in the correct order, I think you should consider the special exception for the common driveway first. The only concern I think that was noted was drainage, and there are several requirements in the regulations that speak to the easement required and so forth. Those would all need to be complied with. But I don't think there's a need for any additional conditions on that approval because I think we've got conditions on the subdivision and the special exceptions for the rear lots. So I would suggest that you just approve the, should you desire, approve the special exception, the common driveway without conditions.
Great. Thanks. Any questions from members of the commission? Now we'll open to the public. Any member of the public wish to comment? Seeing none, do you, Mr. Peppy, have any further comments?
No, I believe we had, as Harry said, addressed everything already with the two lot. It was just, again, just the process.
Great. Okay, then we can close these matters 11 and 12 as a public hearing, and it's probably something we can take up.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you. That concludes our public hearings. Before we move on, is there, in terms of the public hearing items that we may be able to address, do we want to talk about the Todd's Hill Road special exceptions and subdivision? I think, was everyone here for both of the public hearings?
No.
Okay, so okay, Paul, you weren't about...
The last meeting I wasn't here.
You weren't here last meeting, but it wasn't at the last
It wasn't
meeting.
after that.
Correct. It skipped last meeting.
Okay.
So I was here.
Before that.
So so everyone was here. Fred, you would be sitting on this, and so we have 5. Okay, so we've heard both public hearings. Okay, so I guess we can talk about this. So,
So just so I'm clear, the 5 members, Joe, the regular members?
Fred.
With the exception of
Fred.
Fred.
is sitting
Okay,
for
sitting for John last time.
John's not here, so Fred would be sitting. Okay, so what were the issues with this? I gotta get my notes here. The questions are, I guess, Marcia, you had a big question about the overall design, adding a private road to the site as opposed to having common driveways. That was sort of one issue. There were other issues were the main neighborhood concerns. A lot of were concerned about drainage.
Yeah.
And I think my understanding is that most of the drainage, there's on-site drainage for each lot, and the drainage doesn't go toward, it goes to the back. I think they agreed to, for the one outlet in the back that was clogged up, that they would unclog it when they needed to. And the town engineer, I believe, had reviewed the plans at least and didn't see any issues. I think, so I didn't see this as making any drainage worse. There was the issue of the stop sign, which sounds like it's been there and been removed, and sounds like most of the neighborhood thought would be a good idea. And I guess according to Jim Peppy, that a resident, which I guess there's no residents there now, they own the property, but I don't know who lives in there, has to make a petition to the police commission to put the stop sign in, and that's their call, that's their jurisdiction.
So a resident on that piece that's in
Can the
question,
estate
or
do
a
it?
neighbor?
Can the estate do it?
If somebody lives there, I asked the distinction between a property owner, because obviously the property owner could do it, but you have to be a resident. And I don't know if Jim said.
Parcels, right?
Yeah, is Susan Barnes there?
Yeah, she does.
If she lives there, then she could do it, you know, if she's gonna reside there, or if she does reside there now.
Is there a precedent or a jurisdiction crossing if somewhere in our approval, we just have a statement that we endorse the comments made by, we endorse the public comments for a stop sign?
Yeah, I think we can make something advisory in our opinion.
Okay.
Again, even if it's beyond our jurisdiction, we can simply state that we
Support
endorse
it.
or
Yeah,
support.
it's a matter of record that, you know, we as a civic body heard this, and we are transferring our hearing of this with a recommendation that an action be taken.
Sure, so if someone went to it, they could look to our approval and say, planning and zoning endorses this or something. Sure, I think we could do something like that. There was a question of sidewalks, I guess, that was kind of came.
I think it's a double-edged sword. In this project, as it always is. Well, the reason why I say that it's a double-edged sword is because if it's going to nowhere, and we face it all the time, that's one side of the sword. The other side of the sword is you put the sidewalks, and you have a lot of kids. Kids have a tendency to play on the sidewalks.
Yeah.
Because you're going to put them closer to traffic than if they were in their own backyards.
That leads to looking at a subdivision plan with a proper street network in it. You know, and at what point do you know, there's 14 lots now. That's a significant number of lots. You know, at what point do the number of lots drive, more? There's no reason why they couldn't do a PUD and do smaller lots, reduce the amount of road frontage, come in with, a few more lots to cover the cost of the road. I mean, I understand development intimately. It's very hard to, purchase the land, build a house, and cover your expenses. And I feel for the developer, and, and I see this day in, day out. But, there's a right way to do it. And what I'm seeing is that they're using our regulations against us to not have to spend the money for a road. And, the reason here to have a road is because, as we've heard, that, those roads are now becoming a throughway, and that's becoming a much more heavily traversed road, which is why subdivisions were created, to get, a hierarchy of traffic, to get neighborhoods onto smaller, less, artery-type roads than the through roads. So, I think that you could do a lot with this to do a common water quality basin, which would help serve the wetlands as a treatment for the water coming off of the development of the sites. I mean, it's 14 sites. It's a big impact to the property, and they're trying to put it all on, through roads. And half of the lots, are not on the road. So I have a very, I want to approve a subdivision here. I really do, because I think the town needs subdivisions, but I want to see it done, in the correct way. And, why not use a PUD format where you can have a smaller lot footprint, less street frontage, and get a few more houses, which is going to offset the cost of those roads.
I don't think you're talking about the lots on.
There's a couple ways you can
On
do it.
Cherry
You could
Hill,
do a
right?
cul-de-sac
You're talking about
here.
these?
You could do a minor crossing here and bring a road through. I mean, it hasn't been investigated. It hasn't been looked at comprehensively enough to look at the other options that were considered, and why that's the best option for this particular subdivision. Isn't there something in our regulations that requires us to consider alternative plans?
Well, they have to get the special exception for the interior lots, and we can deny that. That's our leverage. But if they meet the otherwise it's very administrative. If they meet the numbers, we don't have any discretion to deny it. But where our discretion comes in is with the interior lots. I mean, what I'm looking at is, I really got it with, with Parish Farms. I'm glad there's no frontage on Parish Farms because of topography and other issues, and they moved them over to, it's all on Todd's Hill.
The driveways.
I don't have a problem with the two on Cherry Hill that are way up there because that's an issue. The question in my mind is this chunk right over here, and they've done a series of common driveways, and
That's the part that bothers me. They're relying on common driveways to maximize their development. on
but
this.
I don't have a conceptual problem with common driveways. I mean, it's functionally the same as a street, but so the issue is the multiplicity of them. If you could avoid curb cuts by having a common driveway or street or whatever the access way is, whatever you want to call it, and have it at one location, that might be better. That might be better, but and that's the question is it a traffic safety issue? That's primarily how I kind of look at it as are there traffic safety problems with, and I think there was on Parish Farm Road, that you could say that's what I heard. And the question is this layout, which has the entrance, I don't know how many there are, 6 or something, how many entranceways on?
The new one or the old one?
Looks like 2.
2, 3.
No, there's
1,
more,
2,
there's more.
3, 4, 5, 6 on that corner, 7, 8, 9, 10 on now Todd's Hill Road. And across the street, you've got two roads, O'Brien Road and Cosgrove. I mean,
Right. Yeah, no, I see your point. The point is Todd's Hill Road the equivalent of a Cosgrove Court or one at Avon Road, the interior courts, which it isn't. If it's more, your point is that it's more of an arterial type of thing, then you should have less, although there are less curb cuts, although there are streets, there are houses all the way up and down, both of these. So, I don't know. I like the other thing this plan has going for it. There's a lot of open space that is going to the water company, and that if you reconfigure it, it's going to be less.
not necessarily if they want the smaller footprint.
There's a minimum lot size unless
You do it as a PUD.
well, that's a PDD, yeah. That's.
You could still do single family.
Well, you could do an open space residential development, which allows smaller lots, but
Right.
Yeah, I guess you could do that, open space subdivision.
I mean, I know we're not wetlands, but, I would have, if I were on wetlands, a lot of questions about how that's flagged, when it's flagged, when it's been mowed for years. Why that's, the value of that
Well-
as a wetland system. And, I would be looking to vegetate it and improve it more. And, one of the best ways to do that is by doing a single water quality basin, for the overall water for the area.
well, I mean, I know they did wrestle with it a bit, and there was an extra lot of perhaps 2 on the original plan before it got to planning and zoning, and those were eliminated to eliminate any required filling of wetland and reduce the impacts. So they did struggle with it a bit. The other thing was mentioned, I believe, at the hearing was the difficult soils, and those were encountered at the Cornfield Estates subdivision too, in terms of actually installing the road and the drainage issues and the actual ability of the soil to water infiltrate into that type of soil too. It's similar soils, my understanding. I think that was stated at the public hearing for this.
Chuck, I didn't hear anybody speak against the number of driveways coming out to that section of the road. I think they were happy that they were no longer on Parish Farms. Yes, Parish Farms. But I don't think there was any opposition to the driveways coming out to where they were now.
There's one woman.
I did.
One woman across the street, I
Talking
think.
more about drainage, I think.
One woman on Todd's Hill was concerned about drainage. I think she's
Yeah.
concerned about the number of driveways too.
Well-
Possibly due to drainage, but.
Well, the other
also-
woman with the bus stops and the number of
Yep.
kids in the neighborhood and the need for sidewalks. And, I mean, it
Right.
all
Right.
relates to traffic and,
It's all
as a
connected,
body, what are our minimum standards for when we require streets. That's what, I feel like we're setting a precedence that we're taking a, very large parcel of land and allowing, umpteen lots to go on it without consideration of the busyness of the traffic. And, there's enough space to do a proper road here. It's not like over on Leeds Island Road where you've got a huge hill where you need the language for the shared lot driveways. Here, it's being kind of, it's being used against us, and it's being done because of the need for there to be more lots to make the road cost effective. So that's
Here, and I kind of get that, but the issue I'm having is this a safety problem?
yes.
Why? Where do you get that?
Because,
I mean, my
because of the
experience-
speed of the people going through the road, the sightline, the number of driveways coming in, so you're increasing the traffic, you're increasing, you're taking Todd's Hill Road, which is not a quiet street anymore, and, it's becoming like a Damascus Road where you need sidewalks.
I think that's an overstatement. I
don't know, I'd be curious to
I don't
compare the traffic counts on the two, because there's a lot of houses on Damascus Road that front that way, and that's one of the reasons why I think
Okay,
sidewalks have
so
happened.
is the entrance and exits of someone pulling into the driveway, you think there's a safety issue?
I think there's
of someone-
sightline issues.
Well, I think there
The
were
need
over
for
here,
some-
and that's why you need a stop sign. You need it now, is what I'm understanding. So we need a stop sign there, but
But all
is
of
there?
these driveways are congregated at the confluence of the intersections.
These.
If they
sure.
were congregated, if you were connecting, a road from O'Brien straight across, or Cosgrove straight across, or doing a small loop through, you could, I mean, I'm not studying this, but yes, I understand that there's a potential crossing or some wetland considerations, but I think there's other creative tools in our regulations that allow for a better design, smaller lots, the ability for the developer to get the, perhaps a few more lots so that he can afford to put the road in, and it would be a much safer, better solution for everybody, instead of trying to just do a lot here and there. And I think isn't that why we have our zoning regulations and our subdivision regulations, to encourage a smarter development?
I agree with it. I agree with a lot of that. It's just that I don't really know if these driveway entrances present safety problems on this particular road. Because if they did, yeah, then I think you should. And then the cost of that would not just be the town having to plow an extra road or whatever, so then the town has to pay for it. But I think part of the reason is I think you're going to lose the open space. I think, and
You're not going to lose all of the open
no,
space.
you're going to lose a decent amount. There's a lot of open space in this, and
I don't think you're going to.
And the town's
You've got
going
the wetland guidelines for that, though. There's going to be, you're not going to you're going to do the plan in a way to minimize the amount of wetland impact. You may have lots that are on wetlands, but as long as they're, 30 feet or in a safe distance from an upland review area, to the wetlands, it's, there's just other solutions that I haven't seen considered here that I think would be, this would be appropriate. And so I'm not inclined to just approve the rear lots because I want to see a better solution. I haven't seen the.
Okay. Fair.
The better solution, though, may not be economically feasible. You're providing a lot of what-ifs with, maybe the developer doesn't want to do the things that you're suggesting, because even with the road, it may be not financially.
That's why he needs to, I don't know what the specific pro forma numbers are, but,
What I'm saying, but every time we ask any applicant to do something, it costs them more money. And in the end, are we here trying to design his project, or are we here to approve or disapprove it? I think that's kind of where I feel. We're not here to tell him how to build a project. I think we're fortunate enough to have a local builder who lives in the town, who wants to do this, and have a lot of faith in him in that respect. I think some of these traffic issues are going to be taken care of, honestly, with stop signs. And if they don't, I mean, what are we supposed to be traffic cops too? We can't be that either. But I think, I agree with Chuck in that respect, that the developer's gonna give up a lot of property. Just give it away. They'll buy it, but they're gonna give it away. For 14 lots, I think it's 14 or 15, is really not a lot of property. If you look across the street, there's gotta be at least double that on Cosgrove Court, or whatever it's called. Maybe there's more than double that, and maybe there's 40 houses up there. Now, you can see putting a road in 14 houses? I don't think so.
I've just done a lot of subdivision work in my career, and, you don't take land of this size and come up with a solution as being half of the lots being real lots in order to save roads. It's, if that's the case to make it feasible, then we should just deny the whole thing, because, I'm trying to propose to the developer, to support the developer, because I think this could be a wonderful project, and it does take some compromise by the Wetlands Commission and some investment in a water quality, common water quality basin and some streets. But, I mean, ultimately, the market value by having a home fronted on a street is going to be higher than rear lots. I mean, I also work in real estate, so I'm very intimately aware of what I'm saying. I'm very intimately aware.
I don't disagree with what you're saying.
Right.
All I'm saying is that, to what degree can we tell a developer how to build a project when he has certain costs that he's got to face? I mean, it may be that the recommendations that are great recommendations are such that it's not worth doing the project.
Well, there's a lot of ways to look at different projects and a lot of ways to price pro formas with lots, and you look at the land costs, you look at the road costs. I'm not going to go through it all, what I do on a daily basis, but I understand what he's up against, which is why, as I say this, in one breath that I don't approve of real lots, I'm also saying that to come in with a different option with smaller lots, more lots, is something that would be approvable in my eyes. If it's done to minimize the curb cuts on the roadway, come in, maybe you give relief with the sidewalk on the new road. We didn't require sidewalks on the other Cosgrove Court or Bryan, that's a cost saving. So there's things that we can do to work with developers, and I want to see him make money on this. I want to encourage development in town, absolutely, but I want to see it done responsibly. And, a lot of times, developers come in and they shoehorn an extra 10 lots because they know some are going to get taken away from them. I mean, I would hope that, our systems are in place that we could help him make money.
Well, Joe or Joe, do you have any thoughts?
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, no, I the direction this is taking, I guess, was one I wasn't prepared to embark on, the concept of sending something back for redesign. I sort of just, it comes here, we evaluate it in terms of, certain criteria and say yes or no, whether it satisfies that criteria. I honestly was focusing in my head more on the necessity of sidewalks. And I'm sorry, it's just, we always get into this, it's like, well, there's sidewalks to nowhere. And we keep making these patches of sidewalks to nowhere, and it's just like, well, let's get some sidewalks to nowhere and see if they link up to something, only from the standpoint that I realize how hard it is to walk anywhere besides the center of town in Brantford. And if the traffic is as bad as they say, and they do have some level of pedestrians, I would endorse sidewalks for this. But with respect to going through a redesign for a different lot configuration or a different density, unless we have a compelling plan of conservation and development goal for this area, I would be hard pressed to sort of force that issue. To a certain extent, the real estate trends tend to be less towards big houses. So big lots, big houses, you know, it just isn't going to pan out in a couple of years. So would we be well advised to say, hey, let's take this back and take a look at it? Probably, yeah. I mean, if we were in, I think, sort of in a different situation. But since we don't have what I understand, at least at this point, to be a mandate to control the design, I'm a little sketchy on how much authority we have to send, sort of send it back to the kitchen. I'm just not sure. I really am just not sure enough to say,
Right.
damn the torpedoes full speed ahead, send it back and fix it.
Right. Joe?
The basic problem we're talking about is 8 lots. There's 15 here that I count, right? There's 8, we're talking about this 1/8 where they changed the curb cuts. They changed the curb cuts, and so into two curb cuts, if I see that right, going into 8 lots? Is that what we're talking, 8 houses?
14 total.
No, there'd be more curb cuts.
Huh?
Yeah,
14 total.
don't be
I'm
confused
not
by
talking
my...
about the other houses. I'm not
In
talking
the
about the
corner?
area. I'm just talking, this is the section in question.
Right, around Parish Farm and Todd's Hill, but don't be
There's-
confused by the green and yellow thing I sent you, because that was just an idea. So it's not,
But there's still 8 lots there.
There's
There's 8 lots here. That's the one in question.
four, five,
that
6
we're talking
driveways.
about.
3,
For the
6
most part.
driveways.
5, 6 curb cuts.
What my suggestion is, my issue is I'm questioning whether there's a public safety issue, that there's a problem of having curb cuts on the road. That's why you would be doing this. That's why you create another road to go in there, is because we don't want to have, individual driveways on this road.
Right.
And my question is that true? And what I'm going to suggest we do is we go take a look at the site. Between now and the next meeting, we'll go up and take a look there, because I think there are a decent amount of houses on Parish Farm that front the street. And up here, right, up there.
You've got
I know,
two
this is different.
intersections here.
Yeah, there's 2 intersections. I understand that. I ride my bike up there. I jog up there. I'm one of those who jog. Yeah, I understand that. But let's take a look at that and then talk again.
Okay.
So
So we're questioning mostly this corner here at Todd's Hill and Park.
Well, there's a similar
Right,
curb
but
cuts at
we're
the
not-
corner
we're not-
of Cherry Hill and Todd's Hill.
Cherry Hill, those 2 lots on Cherry Hill is not an issue.
Right on the corner.
The
Well,
2 up in the corner, I don't think there's an issue. That's a dead end, at least now.
Right.
And I don't think anyone's complaining that. So it's the rest of it.
It's these 2 corners that I have issue.
Right.
And there's 2 on this other corner here, right? What is that, Cherry Hill?
There's 1, 2, 3.
Junction. And there's 3 up in this area.
Yeah, there's the
Right.
one
And then you
existing
got this
house,
8 in this,
2
in the
rear lines.
Parish Farm and Todd's Hill
Right.
area.
And
And that's
then-
where the curb cuts were eliminated.
Right. There is the question, what is our authority here? Our authority, I think if they have a subdivision complies with regulations, we have no discretion. The authority here is the interior lots. That's, that's a special exception, and then we'd have to find, if we denied it, what is the reason that we're denying it? And I know your reason.
Well, I'd
but-
like some legal history on why we have subdivision regulations as far as design requirements. There's a reason why we have all those design requirements, and, what's the history of that as far as...
Subdivision is
It's
just...
administrative.
I mean,
Subdivision is sort of different from zoning. It's division of land. We're not approving any buildings. We're just dividing land into lots.
But
And
in
you
some-
have less, and traditionally, and courts have really been crazy about it, that if you meet the letter of the law, if you have buildable lots, and we're in this zone, what is an R4 zone, if you have the lot size and the frontage for each lot, then you have the right to do it, and that's your right as property owner. And
with the exception of rear lots, which...
well, rear lots
But
don't have
that's-
frontage, so.
Right. So it's a different-
That's our discretion, when we say you can do rear lots by special exception.
So if you don't
know, so-
approve the rear lots, then we're forcing the frontage
They-
of fewer lots, and then they may want to say, hey, if we use some
They-
of these other planning
they
tools
would have
that are
a-
out there, I could create more lots and maybe increase my revenue.
They have a right today to line all of the roads with lots, because they would have frontage.
Except for maybe
And minimum
here.
lots.
Right.
Whatever. They could put a bunch of lots right there, and we'd have to approve it.
Well,
They couldn't get all the lots in, because they want to put it in, put some inside ones. And it is 37 acres, right? What are we talking about? Yeah, it's 37 acres. But they have the right, if they wanted to just put a lot on every house along the whole thing, from Cherry Hill.
typically
and
when
we
they're,
had
when
no
they're
restriction
applying
to
for a
that.
subdivision or for a PDD, you would see a plan that they could do as of right. I mean, can we ask for what would be the as of right plan without the special exception for the rear lots? So that we have a basis to consider the rear lots?
Well, at this point, you close the public hearing, so you can't take any more information, period.
We close the
Unfortunately.
public hearing?
Yes, they're both closed.
But you
All
see what
is
I'm
closed.
saying? I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
I see what you're saying, like a yield
typically,
plan.
you would see a plan that shows as of right what you're allowed to do, and then they would come back and say, and we would like to do these rear lots because of whatever, it allows us to protect the wetlands, and we could discuss the right, or they could say, we'd like to do a PDD because it allows us to do
Yeah.
smaller lots and protect the wetland further and reduce curb cuts. That's all I'm saying, is that,
Right, but there's no spelled out provision for that, like there is in a PDD, or an open space residential development that's supposed to demonstrate to show what they could do with the larger lots to justify collapsing it
Versus-
down. Right, right.
but
But there's nothing spelled out for that in considering rear lots, because the rear lot regulation is set up to look at it on an individual lot by lot basis, not as a grouping of rear lots. So that's the.
that's sort of
a-
my issue, is we're looking
That's-
at 30 acres, and
Yeah, yeah,
and the
it's like
design
a-
solution is to go to rear lots. It's not to look at the whole acreage and
Well-
the highest and best use for the
Yeah.
whole acreage.
But there's
and
no provision
including-
for that.
Including of which is how the developer can make the most money from that. And
Yeah,
maybe
but
this is
that's
how the
something you
developer
guys
makes the most
don't
money,
get-
but is it
Yeah.
the highest and best use? So,
I see what you're saying, and I do get what you're saying, but we'd have to, if you don't like what is resulted, it's hard to force it to something else without eliminating the regulations that allow this in the first place.
Well-
So that would be your only real tool, is to say,
Is to
change
deny
the
the
rear
rear
lot
lots.
requirements. Well, I mean, you'd have to justify that, so that's something you have to consider, how you would do that. And what
well, it's
would
a
you base
special
that on?
exception. So
It
we
is,
have the
but you-
latitude to deny it based on the traffic, the curb cuts.
Yeah, you have to
know.
have some rationale, so you
you
have to
know,
come up with that.
The
what that
the
is.
need in that, I mean, I would be very insistent on seeing, full length of sidewalk in this case because of the type of solution, which it does go to nowhere. So, take that length times the cost of a sidewalk and moving electric poles and compare that to putting in.
I
mean, it's
understand what
just-
you're saying. I'm
There's so
just-
many things that could be considered.
Right, there's design considerations and there's regulatory considerations. They don't overlap and they don't fit together completely. So that's, that's, I think,
So-
what we're running into.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if we need to adjust something in our regs for the number of rear lots on any one subdivision, or,
Those are things you could consider,
I mean-
absolutely, yeah. How they're separated, is there a separation distance? All those things could be
well,
factors
just
that might,
if it's a big enough part, not that we have huge parcels left in town, but
right. That's another thing, is what you're regulating for, what, 3 or 4 more occasions like this? I don't really know what it would be. This is one of the last few large pieces of property that's really probably potentially, so there's a few more, but not a lot more.
Okay, so let's,
site visit?
So do you want to do a site visit as a group? Is that what
no,
you're?
I think we just go on our own.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we need to schedule a meeting and then.
Yeah, and just would caution everyone, particularly the audience members in attendance, residents, some of the commissioners cannot talk to residents at this point because the public hearing is closed. So if you see them out there, please leave them alone because they're just there to look.
Doing our due diligence.
Right.
Okay, so let's, we'll just continue.
So it
We'll
would just be
table that.
tabled to the 20th for a
Right.
decision. Okay.
And we'll see where we go. Okay, so that brings us to minutes. I think they were sent out in our meeting, our minutes from our January 23rd meeting. And have people had a chance to review? And if so, someone want to make a motion?
Oh, only Chadwick, Russo, and Andres can vote. They were the only ones present.
Okay.
I wasn't there, so I wasn't.
So
Okay.
moved.
So moved by Joe. Fred seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. So we approve those minutes. Correspondence?
We do have some.
You did send us some, right?
We did send you a copy of the letter from Kate Galambos that was, I noted that at the last meeting. I think it was sent by email and was in your packet as well. So I think she is raising concerns about two projects, one at 250 North Main Street and the second at Gould Lane. I know both of those have been addressed to some degree at different times by the zoning enforcement officer. I would also just give you an update. We have a temporary zoning enforcement officer who is basically providing about 12 hours of time. So he's just, actually wasn't even here this past week, so he was on a scheduled vacation. But his time and availability to do enforcement is really limited due to the permit load and other considerations of work items he needs to address. So he has, though, addressed 250 North Main Street. He can provide you an update on that at the next meeting if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, if you could do that, so we can just
Okay.
follow up with that.
Yep. Thank
Okay,
you.
so we'll put that on the agenda for next meeting to report on the zoning
On the
enforcement
20th.
for those two.
Yep.
Yeah, for the 20th. Any other correspondence?
There's nothing else in my, oh, wait a minute, take it back. I've got a copy of a DEP license for Treasure Island. I believe it is for a new dock, so it was just addressed to the commissioners, and if you have any curiosity about that, we have it on file and can show you what it's all about.
Okay, great. Okay, that then brings us to old business, and I think the item number one of the old business we can combine with the 11 and 12 public hearing. That's the 292 Leeds Island Road special exception for the interior rear lot for Lot 3.
Yes.
And then maybe we can take that up also with the re-subdivision modification and the special exception for the common driveway.
Right, and I have proposed conditions for the subdivision modification and the approval of special exception for the rear lot, Lot 3, if you'd like.
Okay, yes. Why don't we?
Okay, I would suggest taking them in the order of approving or considering the common driveway application first.
Okay.
And I really have no suggested conditions for that,
Okay.
so.
So that would be number 12 of the public hearings again. So we'll do that one first, the special exception for common driveway. And what's your recommendation?
Recommend approval without any conditions.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the special exception for common driveway for 292 Leeds Island Road? No conditions.
So moved.
Motion made by Joe. Is there?
Second.
Second by Joe. And in terms of voting, is Fred vote? I don't.
Fred's still voting.
Okay. Okay. Motion made and second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. So common driveway is approved. What do you recommend next?
Next, I would suggest you consider the special exception application. And let me pass out proposed findings and conditions.
Thank you.
Okay, this is very similar to the findings and conditions used for Lot 1 and Lot 2 at the January 9th meeting. So you may recall that there was a request to not require the detailed drainage calculations in view of memorandum from the applicant's engineer, and that was concurred with by a town engineer, and the limited addition of impervious surface created by the special exceptions for the other two lots, which also applies to this lot. Also, I believe the other two lots, the commission waived compliance with the full landscaping requirements because they found that the existing natural landscaping constitutes excellence in landscaping design, and that brought up requirements for planting beds around single-family houses and side yard requirements and so forth. You also waive for the other 2 lots a requirement for preparation of landscape plans by a licensed landscape architect. So the conditions proposed, again, very similar to the other 2 lots that were approved a month ago. Erosion control measures prior to start of construction, site triangle for the intersection of the driveway, stormwater storage structures are grading, satisfaction town engineer to capture roof, driveway, yard drainage, identify any significant trees left along the property line of the cleared lot, utilization of low-impact development practices, a typical condition about no lighting greater than 900 lumens without appropriate commission or staff approval, and dust control requirements if that becomes a problem, as may be determined by the zoning enforcement officer, and a requirement that the special exception approval become void if the associated re-subdivision is not recorded on the town of Branford land records.
Okay. Any questions for Harry? Not someone want to make a motion to approve the special exception for the interior rear lot 3 of the re-subdivision for 292 Fleets Island Road in accordance with include the findings and conditions in Harry's staff memo dated February 6, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Fred. Is there a second? Second by Joe.
It's like playing poker.
That's right.
Joe CVC. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That then brings us to the re-subdivision modification.
Pass that out.
Yeah, this is the re-subdivision. This is, there you go. This is number 11 on the public hearing.
As you may recall, this is originally a 3-lot subdivision. A month ago, you approved a version of the subdivision with the 3rd lot basically crossed out and said not a building lot on it. So that plan was brought to the office, I believe, signed by you, Chuck, and it's, I understand, filed in land records, partly to allow sale of a front lot that was also part of the subdivision. So now that the common driveway special exception has been approved, that you just did, and you've approved the rear lot creation for lot 3, now we can go ahead and modify the subdivision to add the 3rd lot back to it, basically. So this is, again, very similar to the subdivision finding and conditions from the January 9th meeting. Again, the finding about the elimination of the requirement for the drainage calculations. I just put a condition in saying all conditions of the approval of the previous application of the 2-lot subdivision still applies as they may, and are incorporating this approval. Also, there's several requirements and things that need to be added to the actual re-subdivision map, the signature block, all the lot markers, including those for the open space, note indicating considerations be given to the use of passive solar, the designation again, the 25-foot site triangle, and flipping the page. Again, adding a note that the Branford Land Trust should have a deeded right to pass through each of the 3 residential lots for the purpose of monitoring and maintenance. Notation that the labeling of the no disturbance 100-foot wetland labeling of the 100-foot upland wetland review area as a no disturbance zone, and any required easements for drainage, access, utility, or other purposes in a form acceptable to the town and ready for execution be provided. Also in H, this would require evidence of the recording of all the easements associated with the common driveway on the land records prior to the actual subdivision Mylar being signed. So this was not the condition on the first 2 lots, so I threw it in to make sure that that's taken care of. Again, the applicant would have 90 days and then an additional potential 90-day period to make sure all this happens. So there's quite a bit of time that could be available. I would be evidence of recording of a deed transferring ownership of the proposed land, open space to the Branford Land Trust. Again, a form of content acceptable to town council, myself, ensuring its permanent protection as open space and meeting all the other requirements of that section of the subdivision regulations. And the final three were the stormwater drainage system determination at the time of the final house design, would address the comments of the town engineer who wanted the roof runoff dealt with through infiltration and so forth. Requirement for underground utilities, which is in the regulation, and a requirement that the special exception approvals were filed on the land records.
Thank you, Harry. Any questions for Harry? Not, someone want to make a motion to approve this re-subdivision application for 292-300 Leeds Island Road in accordance with the findings and conditions of Harry's memo dated February 6, 2020 that he just handed and reviewed with us.
He first, I'll do second.
Okay, so
Joe Chapman.
Joe first, Marcy second. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Joe C.
Okay. Okay, so running through our agenda then, item number 2, we have a public hearing, Secundo Bittersweet Partners. Public hearing is on for 2/20. Item number 3, that's an application, subdivision, 3-lot subdivision application that I understand you still need to review, Harry, is that correct?
We do have a report from our consulting planner who's available one day a week. I have not had a chance to draft up conditions yet, but I believe Mr. Peppy is here to present the project.
Okay. So we probably will not vote on this.
Yes, unfortunately, I did not get a chance to. It's the one I couldn't get to.
Jim Credit, Physical Engineering, the entire property shown here in red is 7 to 11 Mill Plain Road. There's a number of buildings on the property. There's 2 large buildings in the back are multi-unit apartment buildings. There is this house, there's a multifamily house in the front, and then there's a house on the corner here that's historically been used as a law office, or as office space. Proposal is to basically split the property into the separate uses. The majority of the property staying with the 2 residential apartment buildings, and then the law office and the house lot. There was a couple of variances granted had to do with density here because we were reducing the lot size. This did go to wetlands for review. They decided we did not need a permit, so we have to sign off in the file for that. The other thing that was asked of the applicant was to install a sidewalk on Route 1 on the portion here. So that is, and to connect the sidewalk from the apartment building to that sidewalk. That's the only activity on the site. The construction of the 2 side pieces of sidewalk. Not everything else is just lines on paper. There's no other activities proposed here. I did go through the comments from the consultant, and they even start out by saying that most of these comments probably don't apply. And they end with this, they're pretty much the same sentence. There is no construction proposed. They're going to construct the sidewalk, so the typical, utilities and stormwater and all that kind of stuff that they do list here don't really apply. There is existing, if you looked at the aerial at all, I probably should have printed it out, but there's street trees all along this side over here, and there's a significant large trees up next to this house, and then on this side of the site. Actually took a couple of pictures. Just to orient it, this is looking up Mill Plain Road, and looks like they've already planted street trees, and then there's some larger ones farther up. And then that's also looking up Mill Plain Road. And then standing on the opposite corner, looking back toward where that sidewalk's going in, there isn't anything that needs to be removed for that sidewalk.
Would the sidewalk be in this side of the power?
It actually, it's just behind those telephone poles, basically right up against the back of the poles.
Away from the
street,
okay.
yes.
So you have a green strip?
There is a green strip, yes. The only recommendation that I saw in there that was probably worth considering is There is, on the other side of the road here, on this other corner, there's a small little concrete platform that exists there now. And there was a question of whether the town would consider putting in a striping that connects in front of the stop bar. Crosswalk striping.
It's the pad for a bus stop?
Is it just a drop-down ramp?
It's just a drop ramp. There's no sidewalks that connect to it in either direction.
So it's set up for the future, basically, it's all.
I guess, I think DOT had gone around and done a bunch of those
Yeah.
corner pieces all over the place, and
In preparation for what?
preparation for.
Sidewalks.
I don't know,
I
because
guess. I don't know.
you go not very far here, and there's
Yeah,
the
hit
bridge
the-
that got built with no sidewalks on it, about 100 yards away, so.
Yeah, there's a couple right by the entrance, proposed entrance to the, or the entrance of the proposed Hampton Inn as well, so. There was a comment in here about widening the sidewalk to the apartment buildings from 4 to 5.
Yeah, none of the sidewalks on the site are 5 feet wide.
Yeah.
So that's why we had proposed at 4 feet to connect to the, but the town sidewalk would be 5 feet wide.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's really that critical, I guess we could widen that piece, but we didn't see the need for it.
What about the fee in lieu of and all that?
That will need to be determined. They'll have to have the appraisal done.
Yeah, that is a process laid out in the subdivision regulations for that. I mean, there's no appropriate piece of open space that makes any sense, I think, in this subdivision to dedicate. I mean, the only thing you consider is the wetland that's protected already on the other side of the river. I don't even know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just.
Right.
It's
You
not
can't
appropriate.
access it because
It's
the
not
river goes through
appropriate.
there.
Right.
Good protection.
Yeah, I would have had it written up, given the workload, I just couldn't get to this one.
Yeah, no, I
Apologies.
understand. Okay. Any questions for Jim?
Still sleeping at night, or why are you wasting that time sleeping?
2 or 3 hours, yeah.
Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
So this is not a public hearing, so you just simply table it to the next meeting, and
Right.
I'll have something written up.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. Okay, so we'll table that item, which that was item number 3. Item number 4, special exception, access drive and dock that's scheduled for a public hearing at our February 20th meeting. Item number 5, special exception warehouse business, public hearing at our March 5th meeting. Item number 6, special exception accessory structure, also public hearing for our March 5th meeting. And on new business, SB Development, that's Summit Place again. We approved the zone change, but we have not approved the special exception, and they're coming back, and that is on our February 20th meeting.
Right.
Brings us to other business, item number 1, a time extension. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I'll explain it very quickly. There was a request for a time extension submitted by, I believe, Mr. Manieri, back a bit ago. Let's see if I can find the actual letter. So he was referring to 2 applications. One is number 1310.4, and the second is number 141.5. 1310.4 was for a site, actually special exception approval development at 1721 North Branford Road. About the year later, not even quite, they came back in just over the turn of the year and asked for reconsideration of the sidewalk requirement. So in the approving the reconsideration of the sidewalk requirement, apparently a time frame was put on that decision letter, which should not have been, because the modification to the original 2013 approval didn't change the 5-year time frame. It should not have. In December, you granted an time extension for the special permit approval in 2013 that was issued then. It was supposed to, actually it expired, or set to expire in 2018. You granted extension to 2019, and last December, you granted a further extension to December 20th of this year, 2020. So that time frame already exists for the project. And that time frame really includes the modification. So there's not two separate clocks running, there's one clock running. So I'll explain that to the applicant in the letter. Again, it's, I think, confusion probably created by staff here, unfortunately. So
we don't need to do anything?
you don't need to do anything because there's no time frame really to extend.
Okay, because we essentially already granted it.
You already did
and
it.
this was covered by our prior one.
Right.
Okay, great. Anything else? Then planners report.
Let's see, I will, at the future meeting, give you a rundown of the few, probably less than 6 minor site plans I've done, just because I'm supposed to. So I will do that. I just haven't been able to pull together. And I think that's it. We are working on trying to get staff replacements, so hopefully we'll have something to report to you in the future.
Great. Okay.
And I will mention that Mr. Dyer has submitted his resignation from the commission. He, as you well know, found it very difficult to make meetings and has made come to that decision that he can't really continue and regrets that.
Is there anybody in the pipeline as far as any new people that are looking to be on?
I'm not aware of anybody, so I mean, if you have any suggestions, I'm sure that might be welcome.
Great.
All right, thank you.
The motion to, anything else? So, motion to adjourn made. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye, we're adjourned.
All right.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Brantford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BrantfordTV.org.